Hi, this is Gingy Makes Quilts, and I am here to give you some updates on koala custom quilting. So I've got a couple tips, and I'm gonna try to do some quilting here. Apologies for how loud a longarm machine is when running. I am not good at YouTube video editing, so I will not be covering up that sound when I have it running, but will be worth it if you want to see some fun quilting. So I have done most of the first bit of this quilt. This is pretty much how far my machine can go. One thing I wanted to do so that it looks more organic is I'm not quilting all the way down to that line, kind of like straight across, because then, when you advance it and then you start from there, there'd be like a really sharp line where you could kind of see in all of these free motion designs where the blocks of quilting were. So I'm leaving some at the bottom of this area so that when I do advance it, I can wander up into these areas and fill in that space. So that's one tip I have for you. If you've got a lot of long continuous area that you are trying to fill and you have to do, thin strips at a time across the quilt. Another tip I have, so I've been using actually haven't done any ruler work yet, but I did put my ruler base on my machine. And when the ruler base is on, that means that when you get close to the edge of the quilt here, if the clamps were in their normal place, clamped to the edge of my backing, it would hit. It does hit. So to prevent the clamps getting in the way while I'm doing all of this quilting near the edge, I just took some scrap strips of fabric. You can see I pinned it to my backing, and then I'm clamping onto those strips instead. So that gives me an extra like 5 or 6 inches on the edge. So that's very helpful if you are doing any sort of custom quilting and you need the ruler base on. That doesn't really matter when you're just doing like an edge-to-edge pantograph without the ruler base, because the bottom part of the machine here, I think only goes to about here. So even when this gets close to the edge, it usually won't hit the clamps if you have enough extra backing like you are supposed to. So getting into some of the designs, I made a little pivot on the trees because everything else was going to be free motion on here and really organic. I decided not to do any ruler work at all, including the trees. I had in my quilting planning video described kind of a basket weave straight line design. I was going to make most of the trees. I decided to go with this just kind of wavy zigzag and then throw in one of these vines wrapping around every so often. So I really like how that looks. I also landed on this kind of a leaf design. So that is really easy to quilt, and I think it looks great. And then I have 3 of my koalas started here. I decided all their ears are going to be this kind of fur design where it looks like their fur is floofing out from their head. Love that. That's one of the best parts of a koala, in my opinion, is the fluffy ears. So my leaf green koala is going to be a leaf meander. I already started that. My orange koala has ribbon candies going across it. We'll continue that down when I advance the quilt. My red koala has a kind of paisley meander on it. So I've already decided what all 12 koalas are going to be, and I can show you that as I go along. I'll try to go back a little bit so you can see more of the background. So I have just been having a ton of fun with the background. You can see I'm throwing in some big, fabulous feathers where I have lots of space. Also like this type of plant with the little stamens defined. With a lot of practice, those, going out to these circles and coming back gets pretty like just natural feeling. So those are looking great. I asked my daughter, after I had done some of the background, I asked her like what parts of it she especially liked. And she said she loves these type of fancy swirl vines. So I'm going to be throwing those in a lot. And that's what I'm actually going to show you here in a minute of me actually quilting one to finish out this area. So this is what I have so far. You can see that, when I get in those tight spots, I often throw in some pebbles, or I have thrown in, little swirls into these tiny little background triangles, just whatever strikes my fancy. I still have some threads to bury before advancing this part of the quilt, or I might just wait till I have the whole thing off. So what I'm planning for the rest of this is one of these fancy swirl vines. I am going to start right about here on this koala's head, and I'm going to wrap it around and up off the corner so that it fills in most of that remaining background space. And then I will be able to come back in, do a few echo lines, maybe throw in some pebbles if I have empty spots, and that will finish out this whole strip of quilting. And I'm loving it, and I cannot wait to advance and keep going. So let me get my camera set up to show you how I quilt that out. All right, so I am starting here on the side of the koala's face. Apologies for this weird angle. If anyone knows how to do the whole mount a GoPro on your long arm so you can get really nice up close shots of free motion quilting, please leave me a note in the comments and steer me in the right direction. I would love to have a better way to film this. So I'm going to start. I described this in my quilting planning video, but I'll just give a quick refresher here. So the way to make those fancy swirl chains is to start out with a swirl to one side, go back, swirl to the other side, go back, then in between the two, put something, some sort of motif that you like, go back to the beginning of it, and then continue from there. So you are gonna keep nesting motif in between two swirls in opposite directions. And then it's really fun to mix up different motifs. So it kind of gives that illusion of being random, even though it is extremely planned. As I go past this feather on this side up here, I'm gonna make sure I leave enough space because I still have to come back and echo this one time to match what I did on the other side of that feather so that it's balanced. And yeah, that's all I'm keeping in mind here. You can see I haven't done any marking at all. I'm just gonna be taking my swirl chain up off this corner. And again, apologies for how loud this is. Pause it there. So you see I've done my two swirls to each side. This is where I get to add something. So I think I will go with a simple paisley leaf. Okay, so I've done that. Now the next thing is to go off this direction and make a swirl to the other side. One thing I'll note too about these little swirls, you may think, oh, I need to try really hard to go back exactly on the same line I came in. I actually think they look better when they have a little bit of a gap between the two and you really get that sharp point. So I do not worry at all about traveling back on that same line. And now it is time for me to add another little flourish. So I will do that. Just keep doing that all the way up the corner. And sometimes I'll even add an extra little thing. So here I'm going to add just a kind of long, elongated, pointy leaf off probably just one side. And then I will continue my chain up this way. motion quilting, you just have to keep quilting it. Even if you think you made a mistake, you maybe didn't travel exactly to the point you wanted, your circles don't look as much, as perfect as you want, doesn't matter. Just keep going, because you can't judge it until it's all quilted. Once it's all quilted, those little minor details really do not stand out, and it's more the effect of the whole design that people are looking at and that you also will look at once it's all done. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. And there you have it. You have this beautiful fancy vine filling in the rest of that background area. I still need to go back in and echo along that feather, and then probably we'll echo this whole vine as well to really make it stand out. And then I will be advancing the quilt, and we'll give you another update once I have started the next row of koalas. Time for another koala quilting update. So I have gotten through about half at this point. I am finished with the second row of koalas out of 4 rows, and just wanted to give you an update on how those are going. You can see I'm having a lot of fun with my big background areas. For my yellow koala, I used this rainbow design, kind of like a pebble with concentric rings around it. I did what I'm calling a swirly vine design, just a lot of swirls. And then, oh, this one's harder to see. And I'm starting to like pebbles more. I don't know. I find myself going to them more than I thought I would. They can be fun. Oh, here we go. And so then on this teal one, it is a feather design, kind of back and forth feathers. And I realized like on this fabric, it would be a little bit harder to see just because of the value of the fabric versus, this one really stands out. So I will give you another update once I am through with my next row of koalas. All right, I've got another quilting update since I have now finished my 3rd row of koalas. Wanted to show you what I picked for the designs. I did decide to go ahead and do a crosshatch on one of them because I just can't help myself. I bought a new ruler for it. I decided to get this handy quilter. Wow, you really cannot see that. This handy quilter straight edge ruler that's about 1 foot long to help me with those long lines in the crosshatch. Moving over to my blurple koala, that's part blue, part purple. I decided to do kind of a tight free motion wave that I think adds a nice movement to it. And then for this plum colored one, I first put a single row of scallops on here and decided that wasn't fancy enough. So I actually added another little line on each scallop, and I love how it turned out. It looks like a fancy handbag or something. Haven't filled this in yet. I'm going to be doing some fancy vines up there once I advance the quilt. And then I've got a big fabulous feather hanging out over on this side. All right, you're going to get one more update once I'm done with my pink row. I have finished the quilting. I am so excited to be able to pull this off, but first I'll show you this last row of koalas and also how I filled in the bottom of the quilt. So this plum colored koala, I did a pretty tight flower meander, kind of like a chrysanthemum type of look. So you can see I would do a little swirl and then I would put petals around the swirl and then keep echoing that a few times to get these kind of chrysanthemum designs. This pink one, my daughter requested specifically that it should be hearts. So I did a heart meander and I love it. I've never done a heart meander before, but I think it turned out really nice. And then for this last light pink, I did some wishbones across to give it a nice texture. That is the whole thing. I'll maybe do one more video to show the whole thing once I pull it off. This will be my last video showing you my koala quilt. I have it trimmed. Don't yet have it bound, but I don't think that's the important part. I wanted to show you what it looks like all together. So some things I kept in mind as I was doing this is trying to vary the direction of all the different feathers and vines so that it didn't look too like grid-like. So you can see, you know, I've got some feathers that go up, some that come out from the middle, some that kind of do like a curly shape, others that go, you know, down or like across the corner. There's one up there. So just trying to keep it varied. And then the same with these kind of swirly vines that I put everywhere. They go in all different directions, and I think it creates a nice organic look. Another thing that I was keeping in mind is to try to spread out each type of filler and kind of pepper it across the quilt. And again, I'm going to use the word random, but it's obviously not random. It's planned to look kind of random, but it's really planned. So like, for instance, the pebbles, you know, I've got some over here, I've got some over here, some in the middle. I think there's a little bit more there. So trying to kind of spread it out so it's evenly distributed. Same with this paisley filler. You know, I try to use it once or twice on each like row and kind of vary where it's going so that it's not always going in the same place. And since I was able to do that, I think overall this looks incredible and it's exactly what I was hoping it would look like. And I'm very proud of it. So I need to get the binding on and then I will be putting it in the state fair in a few weeks. That's all I have for this video. Thanks so much for watching.